Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to Hot Technologies of 2016. Today's title, An Ounce of Prevention, Forging Healthy BI. I am your stand-in host today, Rebecca Joswick. Eric Kavanaugh had an appointment today. He couldn't make it for our last webcast of the year. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll try to keep up today and multitask at Rebecca Joswick. So this year is hot, or maybe I should say this year has been hot. I mean, geez, we've done 100 webcasts, I think, this year, and on this program alone, we've covered everything from high availability database, data modeling, mainframe integration, that one was pretty cool, security, streaming analytics, edge analytics, embedded analytics, data catalogs, you name it, and we've probably covered it in some way, shape, or form at some time. And today's topic, BI, you might be asking yourself, well, what's so hot and interesting about BI? Well, there are a ton of different components and processes that feed business intelligence. And as we get new data sources, as we get, disparate off-site source systems, we've got to find a way to bring that together, as fast and seamlessly as possible. And any hiccup in performance is going to impact the end user's experience, and that's definitely not something you want in your organization. So with us today, we have our own Chief Analyst, Dr. Bloor. We have our data scientist calling in from Australia, Des Blanchfield, and we have Stan Geiger from IDERA. Now, IDERA has done quite a few programs with us this year. Thank you to IDERA, and this is Stan's first, so welcome, Stan. And with that, I'm going to pass the ball to Bloor.
Okay, well, thank you for the ball. Monitoring BI. And I figured that I would actually just talk around the BI topic. It's been, the last couple of years have really been the year of analytics, and therefore, to a certain extent, BI has taken a little of a back seat as regards, I don't know, exposure, but in actual fact, BI always was, and to a certain extent continues to be the main thread of the feedback systems in an organization, which is the way I think of it. BI is the feedback loop for corporate systems. This diagram, which we've used for about 3 or 4 years now, is just the idea that pretty much all of reporting in BI actually comes out of the activity of insight, which is analytical investigation of data. And this kind of represents it, that, from insight comes stuff, predictive analytics, which is foresight, the hindsight stuff, which is reporting, and the oversight stuff, which you can think of as dashboards. The reason that I add and optimization here is that optimization is a very special area of analytics, and one, incidentally, where mathematics has not yet solved the problem entirely. The begetting of BI, well, the desire for knowledge begets user requests for various IT capabilities. User requests beget analytics projects. The analytics projects beget data lakes nowadays, and the data lakes plus the analytics beget insights. Insights beget BI. And BI is normally implemented as a piece of software sitting over a database. If you think of a full BI platform, this is, by the way, much simplified. You realize it's a very complicated activity. You will or you may get external data going to a staging area, internal data feeding the staging area. You get the activities of governance of the data, data cleansing and ingest activities in order to serve it up. The exploitation of the data is basically reporting and analytics depending on what you are trying to achieve. And a lot of the analytics kind of actually lead to action. And if you actually look at the list down the right-hand side of this slide, it's really kind of, well, when you think that each one of these things isn't necessarily just a capability, it's actually, there are products, several products, maybe quite a few products in pretty much every area mentioned here. You've got alerts, reports, forecasting, dashboards, scorecards, performance management, OLAP, visualization, interactive visualization, BI portals that put together a multitude of these things. Animation. Data animation can reveal things that you can't see in any other way. The data exploration, which is more analytics, interactive exploration, and data mining and text mining and video mining are all kind of analytics. What's called predictive analytics nowadays is, in my opinion, become BI. And this is one of the things that happens, and it's kind of, if you like, consequence of, you investigate things and then you discover patterns and then you realize that certain patterns are regular and then you instantiate those in some kind of reporting capability and therefore it becomes BI. So, about 3 or 4 years ago, people were saying that predictive analytics, only a few companies invested in that, whereas nowadays there is a fair amount of predictive analytics which has just become part of the reporting function or even automated decision-making function that takes place in some operational systems. And, with the advent of streaming, we have real-time analytics, time series, geoanalytics, and all of this machine learning, cognitive computing, and various software developments are all really more part of analytics. It's a huge area when you kind of think about it. We can look at it in a different way. And this is just, to divide between two specific activities, the BI activity, which is basically some kind of reporting going on towards various users in various departments, and the analytical activity, which is really, in my opinion, it's corporate R&D as regards data. And if you actually look at this, then there's the operational apps and the office apps workflowing. They will be passing information to BI apps or analytical apps, data flow management, and then there's all these data flows and data sources from the outside. It's a very complicated operation, and that's just represented in overview. BI disruption is worth mentioning that, what's happened in the past few years is that you've seen data volumes go up, number of data sources. Streaming's become a reality. The introduction of unstructured data, social data, which tends to actually also be on clean data, IoT data, data provenance, compute power, power of parallelism, machine learning, new analytic workloads. All of this stuff has actually been very disruptive in the area of BI. It's disruptive in the sense that the older technologies have not necessarily been able to take all of this stuff on board. It's not disruptive. It's actually enhancing in the sense that more and more can be delivered by BI. BI is basically not a static situation, is what that slide is saying. And also worth emphasizing, but there's not much being said here, that the Internet of Things, event-driven architectures and real-time everything are part of the future BI landscape. And this is just to emphasize, BI isn't going away. BI is probably getting bigger and bigger and becoming part and parcel of more and more of the activity of an organization. So BI of the user, by the user, for the user, that's the whole point of BI. The issues in summary that need to be addressed in terms of having what you would call a coherent BI environment. I think I've listed them all here. Data flow integration, automation, performance, timeliness, data coverage, the data sources, also the structured, unstructured data split, data cleansing, data access skills, knowing how to get at the stuff and use it, visualization, shareability and actionability. And that's kind of a summary overview. The point that I may as well make, because it's the point of the whole presentation, unless the BI service is dependable and timely, it isn't a service. So that's why we have BI monitoring. I shall now pass the ball to Des.
Thank you, Robin. Always a tough act to follow, and while last show of the year, it has been hundreds of these things, which has been exciting. So, my take on this is that as Robin highlighted, the general topic of business intelligence has matured dramatically, significantly. It's a whole new ballgame. Once upon a time, BI was one of the core systems that we might use, in that, we would have a finance system, we'd have a HR system, and a range of silos. These days, business intelligence often is an umbrella that goes across them all and gives us a single pane of glass to view the world with. So this is not your parents' BI. This is something that's grown up a lot in the last decade, particularly the last 3 to 5 years. And more so because of the dramatic improvements in infrastructure and availability, the advent of cloud, being able to stand things up on demand, analytics, big data. These are things that have just made it possible to do new amazing things with data in general, gaining access to data, visibility to data sources and presenting them in ways we hadn't really imagined before. And often I feel like we've sort of gone from spreadsheeting to kind of this new magic that we still haven't really defined properly yet, and that continues to grow. My point of this is the modern BI platforms have lots of really complex moving parts. And to that point, we're not now just using a single database platform to feed one BI engine. That BI engine is often looking at lots and lots of different components, whether it's manual ingesting on a regular basis through batches of data or real-time feeds into other systems. So it's more than just keeping the lights on is my key point with this particular part of my discussion. Once upon a time, just keeping a BI platform up and running and making it available was adequate. These days, that isn't really the case. And it's important to be able to not just keep the complex parts moving, but also actually make them perform really well, because as Robin highlighted, a BI platform that isn't performing well is going to impact a great deal, and I'm going to get into that in a bit more. So the types of things that we need to be thinking about when we think about modern business intelligence platforms are not just keeping the database going, not just keeping the software platform available, and not just making sure that it's reachable by end users and can print reports. It's about the performance availability. Can I reach it, and is it performing quickly? All the way through to things like, what's going into our BI platform, the quality of the data and the data sources. Not just what's in the database that's feeding the BI platform, but what are the other sources of data that are available to it. The underlying database platforms themselves are a natural given, but what about database warehousing environments? The enterprise data warehouse platforms that we're looking at, are they available? Are they performing well? You may have a standalone environment for your BI and protect it and control it and secure it, and it performs very well, but what if all the environments around it are not working well? Particularly now that we've got BYOD, mobility, people aren't just sitting in front of desktop PCs anymore, they're doing it when they're out on the road. These days when we think about the types of things that we're doing with our BI platforms, it's real time. It isn't just a case of sitting down at the end of a quarter or end of the month or end of the week and writing out reports and copying those on the clipboard and running around. We're doing it real time. The transition from desktop PCs to laptops or then tablets or iPads, smartphones, we've got it in our hands. It's real time. If we've got a question about what's going on in an organization, we can ask it immediately. And more often than not, we're prompting ourselves, getting push alerts on what's happening, particularly if, whether it's in sales, in HR, logistics, whether it's in our design and R&D departments, whether it's in development. Even our software development teams are now getting real-time visibility of what's happening in the organization and acting in a more agile format to get things out the door quickly. And so, if we've got a large end-of-year Christmas sale coming, for example, there might be a new feature that someone's asked for, and the development team's being required to push that out the door, and they're watching the BI platform orders coming through, seeing how it's performing and what the business is looking like in real time. Then there's the security of the platform and the governance around it. There's all the usual things like just controlling user access and system access, and even just fundamental things like are people able to log in? Is something responding quickly enough? And then the user interface platform. These days things are often not just some local GUI client. There's a web interface. People come from different access points, so they might be using a desktop PC with an old graphical user interface, and might be using a tablet or mobile device or a phone that's using the web interface, and are each of those presentation layers working? The various analytics platforms that are connected to it, the tools that we're using. So BI platform might provide some functionality. We might use other tools to do analytics in some of the data that's coming out of our BI platform. And then the basic reporting and monitoring and dashboard tools, which again may be native to the BI platform. They may be feeding from the BI platform. These are really complex things to think about, and that's why I keep, when I talk to people, I keep saying this is not BI as you used to know it. This is a whole new generation of BI, and there's some really big challenges that come with it. So the challenges of managing these BI platforms, particularly at scale now, once upon a time it would be just a standalone system, as I mentioned. Nowadays they're very large and complex systems. There are lots of moving parts. And it's not just a case of one subject matter expert managing a BI platform or one database administrator or system administrator. It's often a very large complex teams running our platforms. And particularly because nowadays we're using them more heavily, we demand performance from our platform. So, in my view, and I think many people will agree with me, business intelligence platforms are often the lifeblood of the organization, and that is that, if we have a performance hit of some form, that performance hit will impact the bottom line. So much so that organizations are now often, in the same way that if we can't get email, we can't communicate. If our phones are out, we can't talk inter-office and so forth, or between states and regions or internationally. If we lose a BI platform, or if it's not performing very well, it in effect means we're flying blind, and that's a real risk to any organization. And if we end up with performance issues, we end up with people it impacts adoption. People aren't going to use the tool. They'll go back to pen and paper and fundamental things, which means they're operating with bad data and bad information. And overall, access issues impact all kinds of things, particularly decision-making company-wide. The ability to make accurate and timely decisions. These days we're making data-driven decisions around the organizations, as you've heard the coinage. And that is a reality. It's driven by our business intelligence platforms. We make decisions across all of our organizations at any scale, at any size, any time, based on data we have available to us. So data-driven decisions come out of our BI platforms and our ability to get to them and see time and information. The reporting on it, for example, whether it's daily, hourly, weekly, monthly, it's really important our platforms are responding quickly enough to provide timely reporting. Everything that runs in the organization around reporting, if it's not running quickly, we don't want to run a batch job that takes a week anymore. We want to see it in real time. And so that impacts our overall capacity to run the business. The fundamental reason we all turn up at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, or these days 24/7. And then there's some other things that flow out of it, which often people don't think about, because we often think about it from a commercial or from a technical point of view. The general staff performance and morale, people's ability to do their job, the reason that they are willing to jump out of bed in the morning and come to work, is often driven by their access and availability and the performance of the BI platforms. Not often thought about, but one of the things I see in KPIs across organizations now that I'm working with is we put key performance indicators against all of the elements that drive business intelligence platforms. Because if any of those KPIs start to fail or hurt, we can directly relate that, correlate that against morale and performance of staff in general, and that underpins the ability for the business to operate. And then there's some issues around compliance and governance. Can we report all the way through the organization on how we're going across risk, across governance, across compliance? Are we doing the right thing right now at any point in time? And how do we know that? How do we prove that? If we think about some of these things, the CIO has a lot of responsibility in that space alone. You've got CFOs managing the finance component. You've got marketing officers, CMOs managing marketing and other activities around there in real time. We've got new roles like CDO becoming a thing and getting a seat at the boardroom, chief data officer. We've got risk officers, chief risk officer. Often the CRO had a particular focus on compliance and governance and risk. Now they're thinking about it more in data terms. We've got new roles like one that I've seen recently. It's called a CAO, a chief analytics officer, and that's a role from actuaries through to analytics and data analysts, thinking about what's going into the BI tools, what's coming out of it, what it looks like, is it accurate, is it performing well. So, when we think about it in that very broad brushstroke, we realize that, any particular single performance issue across our entire ecosystem can impact almost every other part of it. It's kind of like a house of cards in many ways, but people don't like describing that, but you pull one out and the rest of the thing will collapse. It's like a domino effect. You knock one over, it will push everything else over, and so it's very important that your entire BI platform remains stable, secure, and online at all times. So to summarize some of the things that I see around the place that can impact performance and leading to our friends at IDERA talking about their platform and where it addresses these things, in many ways, this brings me to my favorite one-liner, the Donald Rumsfeld conundrum here, and that is, there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and there are often unknown unknowns. Things that can impact the core performance of our BI platforms. You know, whether it's our sales platforms, whether it's our marketing, finance, human resource, operations, logistics, planning, forecasting, reporting, all these core functions of the business that we take for granted do invariably pull information reporting and real-time visibility from the business intelligence platforms, some part of it in some way, whether it's in operational, whether it's planning, whether it's design, whether it's strategy, whether it's historical reporting, current real-time reporting, or predictive and future over the horizon, crystal ball gazing. Any of those back-end platforms, any of the front ends, if response time is slow, whether the load averages in the platform start to get hurt for some reason, particularly around end of year, Christmas is a classic for that, which is timely given the time of year that we're in now. Whether there's a particular workload that's running, whether it's batches that are being run, whether it's a backup that's being run somewhere, whether we're doing maintenance or upgrades or patches or some security fix. Particularly now we're worrying about security more and more because of the risk of data breaches and data loss and so forth, given that this is a real hot topic in the industry these days, particularly with you know, social platforms and email platforms losing billions of accounts, which has become a reality. You know, just general system administration, someone deciding that they are flushing out some logs or deleting some unused data. You know, running some of these things ad hoc often can generate workload that has this flow-on impact. Or maybe it's just an event where, you know, mergers, acquisitions, or just ingest of new data, particularly now that we're bringing data sources from outside the business into the business. Someone doing a manual data import, you know, sometimes that generates real load on the back end we haven't accounted for, and everything else slows down. Or maybe we're exporting data for some particular reason. Maybe we're doing something simple as just a mail run, and we're dumping data to CSV to provide to a mailing house. Again, these are things that often don't get thought through, get run, and have a real impact on the business. And you know, so the trick here is we need tools and so forth to be able to monitor that and keep track of it. And so to that end, you know, my overall view of the world is that these complex systems require smart tools to manage that performance. And I believe we're about to hear a really great story about a way to approach that, and particularly a demo on a tool for that. And with that in mind, I'm going to hand to our friends at IDERA. Take it away and let's hear what you've got.
All right, let me share my screen real quick here. So here at IDERA, as you may or may not know, we develop tools for monitoring, several administrative type tools, everything from monitoring to backing up SQL Server databases. So basically what we've got is we've got a tool called Business Intelligence Manager that is responsible for managing the health and the performance and the availability of your Microsoft BI stack. So that's what we're going to talk about today and kind of build off what Des was talking about. I like to put this up. This is kind of the old school view of business intelligence. I mean, you can, a lot of this still is adequate today. It's just expanded with things like the Internet of Things, and now we've got NoSQL databases out there and Hadoop file systems where we're storing unstructured data, you know, and that basically you start talking about those being your source systems for typical business intelligence aggregations, if you want to call them. You know, and here in the middle is where we we might have ETL processes where we go out, we pull data from all these disparate sources and we put them in data stores that then we can do business intelligence operations. Things like, you know, the data scientists can, you know, run R scripts against the data, doing analysis, visualization, you know, things like Microsoft's Power BI. You've got products like Tableau, things like that can sit on top of this data, you know, and those things, you know, basically are in the presentation side of this. You know, they consume the data. So what we're talking about is the platform level, and it all starts with, you know, kind of your data stores. And as Des talked about, you know, performance of those is critical to being able to run your business now. You know, it used to be that you know, your products or whatever you sold was your key component. And now in the competitive landscape, it seems like how well you use the information you have at your hand to make quicker business decisions is really kind of where business intelligence lies now. So talk a little bit about now Microsoft platform architecture, and you know, across their BI stack, basically you've got three areas, and I'm going to include the database component in there too, because that's where typically your data stores and your data warehouse type of applications reside, is on the database side. And that would be where your data storage and aggregation. You know, pulling data, Microsoft has integration services for an ETL platform. In the BI stack, it's got analysis services as your multidimensional cube, aggregation, data store, and now with tabular as part of analysis services, and another way of viewing that aggregation data. Microsoft has the Azure data warehouse now in the cloud. And on the presentation side, you know, I used to be a BI architect, and we always joke that, you know, Excel is the BI tool of the masses, right? So, you know, you still have a lot of Excel connecting to analysis services, things like that. And then on the presentation side, we've got reporting services as Microsoft's tool for reporting. So, you know, Des put up the quote from Rumsfeld. It's similar to the Noam Chomsky quote. You know, you don't know what you don't know. How do you know whether your BI platform is performing like you would like it to be, or like the users would like it to be, or whether services are up or down, or I can't get, you know, I'm connected to analysis services and I can't get to it. Usually that's when the phone or the email start coming to the DBAs or the DevOps team, when the users start complaining. But really, you'd like to be proactive about that. You'd like to know what's going on. You'd like to be alerted when things are starting to get to a point where users become impacted and the business becomes impacted because they can't get to the information they need to. You don't ever want to be in that situation where, you know, oh, there's a fire, and you turn around and, you know, 10,000 acres are on fire and you've got, you know, a garden hose. So when we talk about platform monitoring, you know, some of the things we look at wanting to be able to monitor: availability. Are those resources up or down? Are they running? Be able to do some root cause identification based on availability. We also want to look at performance. We want to look at performance not only of the resource itself, but at the server level, maybe the hardware level, because, you know, things going on that piece of iron or the VM or the virtualized environment that you're running these in, you may have other things that are going on at the same time that your BI resources are running. So you want to be able to see what's going on at that server level. And you want to be able to identify those bottlenecks and look at the level of performance at those resource levels. You know, the other thing that people, you know, often forget is you need to look at the utilization of those resources. You know, who's connecting? Who's connected now? What are the active sessions doing? You know, what queries are running? What reports are running? What interactions are being done at that point? Because if you don't look at that, how do you know how to troubleshoot performance issues? Basically, you get an alert and says, hey, my CPU was at 95%. Well, you know what? That could be good or that could be bad. It could be good in that, you know, my server's really cranking out and really performing at optimal that I want, or it could be that I've got one thing that's tying up my server and everything else is waiting on there. So you need to know what users are doing. And one of my favorite quotes from the immortal Burt, who was played by Gross, I can't remember his first name, in Tremors is when you need it and you don't have it, you sing a different tune. And that's kind of the way we view here at IDERA about our monitoring, our performance monitoring products. You know, you don't think you need it until you don't have it. So, you know, and then you're singing a different tune. So let me, I'm going to pull up the demo here. So what we're looking at here is our BI Manager tool. Now, if you want to monitor your entire Microsoft BI platform, we have a companion to actually BI is more of a companion to our Diagnostic Manager product, which has been around for over 10 years and pretty well known out there in the industry. And it monitors basically the database platforms. The BI Manager product, which we're showing here, monitors the BI stack. So those are your BI services, integration services, analysis services, and reporting services. And one of the key things, as I mentioned, that if you're going to be proactive, you need to have an alerting mechanism. So what we have in the product is the ability to specify alerts and specify thresholds for those alerts, and the ability to be able to be notified, or to specify, email groups or people that need to be notified when things happen. So you can see an example here. I've got a set of alerts, and you can see they happened over time here. And you can see what the alert is. You know, I had where my analysis services is down, for example, and I could set up email alerts on that so somebody is alerted. So this is the way you become proactive, is to, be notified before things get to a critical situation. And one of the things you need to be able to do is to be able to drill in and see what was going on. So I'll use this alert, for example. I can click here, and it will take me to that point in time and show me what was going on in my analysis services instance, for example, at that point in time. So what we see here is when that alert was triggered, now I can see, for example, what was going on. So, in this case, I can see there was some CPU thread switching going on, and I'm not going to go into these metrics in detail, but I can see these peaks now, and I can see whether this was ramped up or ramped down after that. Because it only happened and then it went back down, I'm probably not too concerned about that. So, one of the things we do here is be able to monitor at the server level and also at the service level here, the analysis services. And I'm just going to cover one more area in here, and I talked about user activity. One of the things I can see here is I can see actually what was being run against my analysis services instance that I'm monitoring here. I can look at these queries and actually see what they were doing, and I can see performance metrics around there. And what that's important is I get the phone call and I say, man, everything was running slow yesterday between 10 and noon. What was going on? I can set to that time period here, and I can go back and actually see what the users were doing. Not only can I do that, but then I can start looking at things around the platform itself to see what was going on. Things like, the caching mechanism, things like that. And then I begin to be able to correlate a story around what was happening there. And that allows me to go back, and by figuring out what's happening, then I can put things in place. I may want to change configuration. I may want to add more memory. I may need to make some changes around the platform itself to be able to so that doesn't happen again. And one of the things we always like to say, it's critical that you monitor this stuff over time. So, when you look at some of these charts, you can look and see how your resources are doing over time and utilize that for capacity planning. I may need to ramp up my hardware to be able to handle the capacity that I'm starting to approach over time. So, these tools are really good for capacity planning also, not just correlating and identifying events and what users are doing. The other thing we talked about integration services being the ETL platform. So, in business intelligence, as I mentioned earlier, you typically will take data from multiple platforms. You could have your financials in an Oracle system. I could have an SAP environment over here. I can have some SQL Server databases running over here, but I may want to pull all that data together into my data warehouse. And I may use a tool like integration services. So one of the things that's critical about that is the ability to see what's going on as far as what's running and what's running, how it's running, and whether it's failing. And one of the things we do here in the product is allow you to go in there for integration services, and we monitor all your package execution. So if you're running ETL processes, we monitor those, and you can get, say you had your data warehouse, your dimensions, and your facts, your job that runs integration services, that updates your data warehouse for your dimensions and facts every night. We'd like to know whether that process failed. You know, you can be notified on that through the product. I can go here, I can drill into it, look at the steps that ran within there, and I can see, in this example here, that this step failed. I can click on that step, and then I can get the messaging around. I can get the actual error message. So what we like to say is our goal is to shorten that window from the identification of a problem to fixing the problem. So this allows you to drill into and get right to the root cause of the problem. I can look at this error message here, and I happen to know what the error message is here because I looked at it earlier. And by knowing that, I can go right to, now I can go fix my process, kick it back off, rerun it, and it shortens that window down. So it's all about getting to the problem, fixing it, and getting things up and running again. One of the other things that we also provide here is the ability to look at these packages over time and look at how they're running. You know, and this kind of gives me an idea. You know, if I see spikes and it starts over time to be running longer and longer, I may want to look at things like my maintenance window. My maintenance window may be shortening such that I need to move things around, such that, you know, this job where it used to take, you know, I may want to go in and start juggling around my my schedule. So again, just information so that you can keep things up and running at an acceptable service level to, you know, the people that need to get to that information from the BI standpoint. On the reporting services side, we monitor the reporting services also. And one of the key things there is you'd like to know what reports are running and how long they're taking. So we go in here and we monitor that, and whether they're subscription based or ad hoc, we monitor all those reports. So what this allows you to do is go in there when some, you know, customer calls or an employee calls and says, or the executive calls for that matter, hey, I didn't get my, you know, TPS report today. So you can go in here and see, oh, well, it failed, and then correlate why did that fail. Well, then you can see, you know, when that report ran, you can then go into, and maybe it was running against analysis services. Maybe it was running against the data warehouse. I can go into Diagnostic Manager, kind of the sister product on the database, and I can go in there and say, oh, here's what happened. I don't know, you know, memory was constrained, the query got deadlocked, that the report was running, and it was a deadlock victim, and it killed the connection, and that's why the report didn't run. But, you know, if I could kind of sum it up, the key thing is it goes back to you don't know what you don't know, right? So it's important to have tools around being able to monitor that environment. And it's not about just having a tool that notifies you when stuff breaks. It's about having a tool that you can monitor and set thresholds and look at things over time so that then you can be proactive about your BI infrastructure and your BI environment in order to be able to make changes or have a better user experience, or for people to get to the information in a timely manner that they need, you know, because that information becomes old really fast. So I guess that's all I've got. So I'll turn it back over to Rebecca or whoever's next.
I'm sure that Robin and Des have a lot of questions for you, and I do have a couple good ones from the audience too. So Des, why don't you go ahead and fire away?
Absolutely, I have lots of them. My first one, though, is just a couple of high-level ones, if you don't mind, just to set the scene. So is it the case that you're seeing BI mature rapidly, and now there's not so much a scramble, but certainly a lot more attention being focused around the organizations around not just having a BI platform and just parking it, but are you seeing that people now are just living and breathing with BI in their hands? I mean, I've noticed a lot of folk now do it, you know, just walking around with tablets and phones with their platform on the screen on a regular basis. Is that what you're seeing?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, my background is in BI, and I've been removed for about 2 years since I've been in product management, and it's just changed leaps and bounds. I mean, Microsoft, I forget what the term they use. It's about getting the data in the hands of the users, right? So you see things like Power BI and mobile platforms and things like that. So you're exactly right. People walk around basically connected to the BI platforms now and just being able to dynamically run stuff. Used to be we got reports, right, and dashboards, but now, you know, data changes so fast that these platforms are so much more flexible and able to get that data quickly to the consumer.
I was at a logistics firm recently, just catching up for lunch with a friend, and he was walking around with an iPad Pro, and I asked him how the experience was. He said, look, I don't actually use the device for general things, and he hit the wake up button and showed me, and on his screen, I won't name the product, but he had this live dashboard, and his job was to make sure that trucks are coming and going and delivering logistics. And this wasn't even sort of related to the Christmas period. This was just general day-to-day. They had hundreds of trucks coming into their depot every day. And he said that once upon a time he would get up and arrive, and there'd be reports on his desk with graphs and things, and kind of, you know, what he called the clipboard experience. Now he's walking around with a digital clipboard. And so I asked him, you know, leading up to this event, I said to him, you know, what happens if you end up with a performance set? And he went pale. He was like, no, don't jinx me, don't put the kibosh or the, you know, he's like, no way, man. He said if we have an hour outage, he started listing the flow on effects, and it was in his mind, performance hits of BI equated to kind of like a disaster recovery event. It's like, well, if we're offline for BI for an hour, we start thinking about cutting over to disaster recovery platforms. So it was interesting, and I'm interested to hear that, you know, you're seeing that around the place. Do you think that where do you think this sort of now? I mean, the types of tools you're talking about are often something that might be used by a very technical part of the business, but are you seeing this being a focal point now, as in, you know, your product being demanded by chief data officers, chief risk officers, and so forth, as opposed to maybe previously something just the CIO, CTO would be thinking about? Is it less the technical part of the organization and more the commercial and senior execs outside of the CIO's office asking for access to this sort of tool being enhanced?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but this product runs in a web console, not a Windows client. And one of the reasons is that one of the things that we're finding is yes, I mean, I won't name the customer, but it was a large entertainment firm, and that was one of the whole reasons they were looking at this, because the CIO wants to, the CTO wants to be able to see when these platforms are up and how they're performing at a high level, because they're getting the nasty phone calls from the guy if it's down for 5 minutes, I'm now 5 minutes behind on my trucking, right?
Yeah. I definitely am seeing that now, and it's a pleasant surprise, because I think, you know, I don't think it's an Australian thing. I think it's a global thing now, and a couple of forums I've been to, and I had the privilege of keynoting at a Smart City conference the other day, and the number of people talking about what we would normally consider business intelligence, they were talking about it like big data, like analytics, and the whole range of things and new coinages that sort of, you know, marketing and vendor land or the media have hyped up. But really, when I brought it back a couple of times, I said, you know, you're really talking about fundamental business intelligence. The analytics you're talking about, the big data you're talking about. I said, you know, you're bringing us back to just some smarts about what's happening in your company. Are you also finding that there's a shift in one of the things I noticed, you know, your tool talks a number of pieces of the puzzle. Are you seeing a shift to people thinking outside their own computer room or data center, so that they're now worrying about what's happening in their cloud platforms and what's happening in third-party platforms and how to monitor that? For example, you know, I might be dependent on someone else's system, and I'm now starting to think, well, okay, that's great that I know my BI platform's working well, but what about their infrastructure? What about the bits that are feeding us? Are you seeing a more broad view of the world in that sense?
Yeah, if I understand what you're asking, we get customers all the time asking about, hey, you know, we're moving some of our platforms to the cloud, and, you know, typically, you know, you get charged based on utilization. And how do I know that I'm getting my bang for my buck? Because I get a bill saying I use this much utilization, but I want to know that, because I'm basically sharing resources, if, it's a result of poorly performing resources on their end. So we do get asked by customers a lot about monitoring the cloud, being able to monitor their cloud environment from the standpoint of being able to know whether they're getting the bang for their buck on those platforms.
And are you seeing people, one of the things that I was just watching a demo, the thing that stood out to me was I can now put a quantitative dollar value against the KPIs inside the BI. So a lot of companies I'm seeing around the place now are saying, well, what does it cost if this platform's offline? What does it cost if we don't invest in this core infrastructure? If we don't have X, does it cost us Y? Are you seeing a conversation around the place now where it's almost like a fait accompli from your point of view because it sells your product, that people now actually understand the quantitative value and commercial bottom line impact of not having their BI platforms online and available, and that they're now essentially dependent on them as a critical business system?
I think in my experience, the conversations are starting, but they're having a hard time coming up with the dollar, with an ROI, basically dollar value, and then being able to all they can do, all just in my experience and with customers is like, yeah, we know that we need to have these things up and running, but we haven't really been able to figure out how to put a dollar value on, if I'm down for half an hour, for example.
Right.
But the conversations are starting, and I think over the next year or so, we'll start to get to a point, because we struggled for a long time early on, trying to come up with ROI for having tools. Period. 10 years ago.
Yeah. I suspect that it'll almost be a metric built into platforms. I haven't seen it become an actual dashboard yet, but I've been in conversations where people turn around and say, well, why can't we have a dashboard for that? And almost a dashboard to show us what it costs if the dashboard is not available.
Right.
From a technical standpoint, what does it look like for? I think one of the questions that I got asked a moment ago, just through the WebEx platform. What is in a couple of minutes, just a really short version? What is the journey of going from not having your tool in place to having it in place? What sort of time frame does it take to implement it and get it running from like even a proof of concept? What does that look like? Can we download a free trial? What sort of resources do we need inside the organization? How do we go about putting it in place and doing a proof of concept and seeing what the value proposition is beyond the great demo you've just provided?
Yeah, so, one of the things we do is we have a trial buy, experience. So they can go to the IDERA website, download a fully functional version of the product, install it, and run it for 2 weeks, and it's a fully functional product. And it's not real complex. We don't have it's agentless, so there's nothing to install out there on the instances. You just basically have to download it, install it, set it up, and then register your BI instances that you want to monitor. And then we have a data collection process that runs on the as a service on the client side, and it just goes out there. By default, it's set for every 6 minutes to collect data, except for query data, which you can turn on to continually collect. But anyway, long story short, it's very easy to set up. There's not a lot of pieces to it. You just basically install it, give it the credentials that it needs to be able to communicate to those platforms, register those instances or those platforms you want to monitor, and then you're up and running.
When you were doing the demo, the thing that really struck me as well is that there are a couple of tsunamis coming at us. They're kind of like freight trains running at the tunnel, and the light at the other end is not good news. There's a lot of talk about whether it's on one end of the spectrum of smart cities and infrastructure that's becoming intelligent, autonomous vehicles, or whether it's the IoT in general. Where do you see some of the biggest impacts hitting BI in the next sort of 3 to 5 years? What sort of things should we be thinking about, given that you're at the bleeding edge of it? You're talking to companies on a daily basis about the types of challenges we're seeing. if I'm on the show now and I'm thinking, where should I be focusing my time and effort to get a business case and a cost model together to get this all in place? Is it the companies are getting smarter and being expected to deliver more? Is it that they need to think about what IoT even means to them? You know, if you're Airbus and you're making airplanes and you're putting sensors in airplanes and these sensors are producing terabytes of data, where are some of these bigger impacts that you're seeing come through?
That's a really good question. I do another presentation. I actually call it a data tsunami instead of, instead of a data lake, because of just the sheer amount of information that is collected now, right? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'm keen to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the biggest issues that I hear from customers and just colleagues of mine that I keep in touch with is I've got this sheer amount of data. How do I correlate all this data to in the organization in such a way that we can make sense or make sense out of what this data means? Because there's such a sheer amount, it's like, people use the term unstructured data, but it's only unstructured until the point that you need to make, you need to use it to make a decision. Then you structure it so that you can then get relevant or meaningful information out of it. And the biggest thing they struggle with is I've got instrumentation over here, data over here. How do I correlate that with, production data of the widgets that I'm building or the airplane parts, or, it's like, I know there's some correlation there. How do I get my head around that to be able to put that in some kind of a meaningful platform that people can make, quick and good decisions that are relevant to the business? It's just, in other words, it's just dealing with the sheer amount of data and how to figure out how that data fits within the organization. I mean, obviously, you can make some stovepipe, decisions around that, but there's correlation there, and I think that's why data science is such a big deal right now. Now we've developed, there's this whole career and mindset around using this higher level mathematics and things and machine learning on taking that data and trying to mine those correlations and that information out of there. So I think that right now that's one of the biggest challenges, and I think that's why you're seeing data science and things like that growing so fast.
You've actually led me to my last question before I hand back to Dr. Robin Bloor, who I'm sure has got some great questions. But are you seeing not a shift to, but also a balancing out that the traditional enterprise IT shop has now had to kind of almost give way a little to the refocusing around data science? And I'm seeing a heavy move, not away from, but we used to be really anally fixated about how our IT shop was running in the CIO's office and whether the lights are flashing. I'm now seeing like a second genius pool arrive in organizations, particularly around the BI platforms, where we've got actuaries, we've got statisticians, we've got data scientists as a whole. They now want as much infrastructure as the rest of the business, if not more. And they're saying, look, we want access to the data, but we also want to run it somewhere. And we don't just want a Hadoop cluster with Spark. We don't just want an analytics platform. And as Robin alluded to, that we've got machine learning being applied to things now by default. We've got cognitive computing, and there's the likes of the Watson platform from IBM that we can now throw BI data at and say, well, what if? Are you seeing a rebalancing of where the focus for the technology component of the business is, and some more pressure being put on the team delivering BI infrastructure and services to now support yet another big piece of the business around data science in particular? Is that something you're seeing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question and a great observation. You're definitely seeing that. It used to be that, for example, if you had a BI group, it lived in the IT. Well, it's still, the data science still may live in that area, but it lived pretty much next door to the DBAs, right? Or the guys responsible for all the data stores. Now you're seeing this other that grow out. And sometimes those BI analytics groups and data science, you know, those groups are living outside now. I'll call it on the business side, outside of the IT department. So what's happening is exactly like you said. They're using these platforms, and these platforms are needing to expand so much that they are putting a lot of pressure on the IT groups. Or in some cases, you know, I always tell sales reps when they sell this product, you know, find a data analytics group, find a BI group, find, you know, not just the IT folks, because they're interested in their platforms being up and running because their jobs depend on it.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm seeing that you know, once upon a time the CIO got removed from the boardroom. You know, he was too technical. He was using acronyms that no one understood. Now the CIO, not just the CIO, is back in the boardroom, but I'm seeing you know, CMO, you know, chief marketing officers, chief data officers, chief risk officers, and now analytics officers are being brought to the boardroom, and they're being asked these big questions of, you know, what if, where is it going through, what's over the horizon, what's in the crystal, you know, ball, and it's predominantly analytics. But it's analytics and the BI, and I think this is an interesting point in time now because people are having to create a vocab and a language to describe what they're asking for in a common way so that people understand it. Well, look, I thank you very much for your time on that, and really, really great answers to those questions. I'll probably throw a few curveballs at you there. I'm going to pass to Dr. Robert Bloor, and then I know we've got some questions that have come from the audience as well, and we're probably running short on time. So, Robin, can I pass to you? I know you've got a couple of curly ones to throw as well.
Yeah, sure, you can pass to me. And what I'd actually like you to do, Stan, if you can, we've done a number of these hot techs with the various IDERA products, and it's quite clear to me that in one way or another this fits into the portfolio you've got. If I were in the situation, let's imagine I'm a corporate that has actually got very poor monitoring tools, and I have BI out there, and I have databases out there of various sorts and various BI applications. How does the portfolio of monitoring and fixing tools that IDERA's got, how does that all fit together?
Well, that's a great question. You know, I think we have three. You know, obviously we have tools. You know, we have, you know, you mentioned the diagnostic manager on the database monitoring side. We've got BI manager on the BI monitoring side. And then we've got other tools like inventory manager that you can run, and it will go out there and find all of your instances, your SQL Server instances, both BI and database out there. So now I can discover what I've got, and then I can use the monitoring tools to point to those for monitoring. And then we also have, you know, security tools like Compliance Manager and Secure to go out there for doing secure audits and things like that. So now I can check, you know, if my environment is secure, and I can audit my instances and make sure that they're set up correctly. And you know, and then we've got other tools that do job management. So basically our whole portfolio is all around being able to monitor, you know, discover, monitor, you know, audit, and audit around that entire environment. And most of those tools fit in this, you know, as I mentioned, this is a web console-based product. BI Manager is. Diagnostic Manager, our backup and recovery tool, fits in this web console. So you could conceivably have several of our products, and they all fit within the same web console. So it gives me a holistic view across my environment, from my disaster recovery to my monitoring to, you know, my discovery of all the instances that in my environment. So there's a pretty good synergy between the products there that fit into the web console, as I showed earlier.
Yeah, I was getting that impression from the various kind of hot techs that we've done with IDERA. And I mean, another kind of the one thing that I didn't get from your demo, if I wanted to an overview of what exactly is going on before I dug down into anything, was there a screen for that in the tool, or is that part of another?
Because you know, with that short amount of time, basically what we do in each one of those services is you can look at things at the server level. So we monitor things at the server level, and then I can also drill down into the different areas. I can go down and look at user sessions, the active sessions that the users, for everybody who's connected. I can even drill into and see what they're doing. So if I see, you know, if you were connected, I could click on your login or your session, and then I can see what you're actually running or interfacing with that resource. We just, for time, I didn't go through that, but yeah, you can look at the different areas and drill into those different areas.
Yeah, I was particularly impressed with the root cause identification, because I used to do a lot of that when I was kind of, I don't know, it's about 25 years ago, so life is slightly less complicated than it is now. I think things are kind of running out of time. Rebecca, have you got any questions from the audience?
I do have a couple of questions from the audience, and audience, thanks for sticking with us and spending time today on our last webcast of 2016. Stan, I think I know the answer to this question, and I think we've had someone from IDERA do a Hot Technologies on this very solution, but maybe you can just talk a little bit about it. But does the BI Manager help at all with query performance tuning? And I'm pretty sure you have some other products that do that. Is that right?
Yeah, so we have a couple of things. We have the SQL Doctor, which will go in and look at your database instance for that, and then we have another product called Workload Analyzer, SQL Workload Analyzer, that looks at queries. Right now, that looks at the queries against the database side. Right now, we don't have a comparable product for like queries that run against analysis services. But we're looking at, down the road, developing a similar product for looking at queries or optimizing queries on the analysis services side. Now, you do have the ability to be able to view those queries, but you'd like to be able to use our product similar to SQL Workload Analyzer, which actually will go in and analyze those queries. So we're looking at a comparable product for the analysis services piece.
Okay, good. And I mean, I know every time you run any extra service or script or anything on a system, it might, whether it's by a little or a lot, impact performance. But how would you kind of judge the way BI Manager impacts performance, or does it at all?
You know, I usually say it's less than 3%. You know, people always wonder what the overhead cost is, and because we're agentless, so we don't have something actually running on that server, you know, that obviously saves things. And even the query monitoring piece for analysis services, it's very low overhead, so it's less than 3%.
Okay, good. And I know we're going over the top of the hour a little bit, but I did kind of want to ask this question. I know in your architecture slide, let me pull it up real quick. Down at the bottom, you do mention metadata security and encyclopedias, and I'm having to assume that you're using some other product for security, but one attendee does want to know how do you deal with cyber attacks, or what are you using for security?
Oh, what we are using in the product?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, yeah, that's a good question. I can tell you at a high level that because we have a lot of government customers, that we're using whatever, I forget what the name of it is, and I should know it, but we're using secure connections between our we're using secure connections between our communicating between the web console and things like the services and things like that. You know, I apologize, I don't know the specifics around that, but we have several government customers that are even DoD customers, and so we're really, how can you say, we're hyper sensitive to that, so we always try and use the latest protocols to protect against any kind of outside intrusion into our products.
That's interesting you brought that up, and I'm not sure if this is a question where you'll say, I could tell you, but I'll have to kill you. But another attendee is asking, does the military intelligence enjoy kind of better analysis, more secure protection than typical business intelligence? So I'm not sure if you can answer that or not.
Well, through the product, it's across the board. I mean, no, we don't do, to my knowledge, unless they just don't tell me. But to my knowledge, they get the same product. They get the same product that everybody else does. So everybody gets the same security.
Okay, that's good to know. And before we wrap up, Stan, is there any place that our folks can go to maybe get a free trial or download a light version?
Yep. So you can just go to IDERA.com and go to the product section, and then you can see BI Manager in there. And if you go to the page and register, you can get a 2-week trial, and it's a fully functional copy. So it's not a light copy. So, our kind of our sales model is trial buy. So we like our customers to be able to trial the the real deal for a couple weeks, so they can make sure that it works for them in their environment.
Okay, good. And we do have a few more questions from the audience. I will make sure they do get forwarded to the presenter today if we didn't get to your question online. With that, folks, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks so much to Robin Bloor and Des Blanchfield for doing our hot techs as always, and thank you, Stan, a really good demo. And this is it for 2016. Everyone will kick it off in 2017 on January 10th with IDERA again in the briefing room this time, so that should be another fun time. And everyone, hope you have some merry holidays. Hope you maybe get to have a little R&R and have a great New Year. And with that, folks, bid you farewell. Take care.